Okay, we are here with Isabel LaPorte. It is April 14th, 2015. Can you hear me? Is it okay?
It's okay. Yeah.
And we are visiting Mrs. LaPorte at her home in Chatham. So I'd like to know, just to sort of put this all in context, just a little bit about you. You didn't grow up on the Cape, did you?
No.
No. So where did you grow up?
New York City.
Really?
Yeah.
You really came to the country, didn't you?
In the Bronx.
You grew up in, well, I see your publication over there about the Bronx.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my, that must have been quite an adjustment for you.
Well, we had come here in the summer
Oh, so you
before,
knew.
so we knew what was here.
So did you come here as a child in the
No,
summer?
I was 21. Oh, no.
And-
As a child, I came when I was 6 to this house.
To this house. So you had family.
My aunt had this house for a summer home,
I see.
and we came up in the summer.
And what was her name?
Mary Stone.
Okay. So you came up most summers from the time
Every
you were
summer.
6? Oh.
Every summer.
But you moved to Cape Cod when you were...
21. My mother and father and I.
Oh, all right. And did they come for business? Or did they...
Well, it's a long story, but the city was changing, let's
Yeah.
put it that way. So
Okay.
we
And
came
where did you move to at that time?
to Brewster.
To Brewster.
Mhm.
What year was this?
1947.
Oh, so you've seen a lot of changes in
yes,
Brewster,
yes,
haven't you?
Yes.
Now, you were 21.
21.
Were you a teacher at that young age?
I had just gotten out of college, planning to be a teacher,
Uh-huh.
and there were 3 vacancies in the Brewster School. 1st and 2nd, 3rd and 4th, 7th and 8th. And I took the 3rd and 4th position.
Was that an age you had hoped to teach, or did you not have a preference?
I liked it because they were old enough to know what you were saying and young enough to be sweet and lovely.
Yes! I think we understand that, yeah. So, through your career, did you always teach that age?
3rd and 4th.
Because some teachers switch around amongst different
No, I
grades.
never did.
You were
I
always
was
3rd and
cemented
4th.
there.
From 1947
till when I retired in 1985.
You know, I thought you had taught much longer than that.
Really?
I thought you were part of the school.
Well, there may be a few dents in the floor.
So, in all that time, when you first started, were all of the classes 2 classes in a room?
Yes, for the first 2 years. 1st and 2nd in one room, 3rd and 4th in another, 7th and 8th in another.
So there were only 4 classrooms being used?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
And the cafeteria
Yes.
downstairs was there. And the principal's office was there on the upper level.
But there was there the auditorium gym?
No, that
No,
was in the
that-
50s. They
that
put
came
that
much
on.
later.
Yeah.
But there was a cafeteria
Oh,
downstairs.
yes. Mm-hmm.
And did all of the children have lunch there?
Beautiful lunches. They were prepared by a Mrs. Morse and Hilda Cash. Home cooking.
Yep.
Chicken, mashed potato, meatloaf, beautiful lunches. And your brother-in-law refused to eat any of that. He ate his bacon sandwich. And Mr. Burst, the principal, would be wild because he was not setting a good example to the other children.
So let's just make this clear.
All right.
You're indicating Diane Jones, who is also in the room. And her brother-in-law is,
Had
what,
said,
what was his name?
Roy.
Roy Jones. Okay. Because he knew what he wanted.
He knew what he wanted.
And the school was, even if Mr. Burst was not happy about this, the school allowed this.
He had to, I guess.
Okay. But it was not common for children either to go home at lunch or
No. They
to bring
stayed
their
right.
own
No,
lunch?
they all came by bus.
Okay.
So they were there for the day.
But some children walked to school.
Very few. There was maybe 2 families near the school who walked, but they stayed for lunch.
They stayed for lunch,
Yeah.
of course.
Once
Okay.
you were in for the day.
And what was the length of the school day?
9 to 3.
And that changed over time, didn't it?
And then you had about an hour and a half for lunch.
Really?
And they all went out and played on the playground. And in the winter, there was a pond behind the school, and that would freeze over, and they'd ice skate. Mr. Burst, the principal, would go down with them and skate, and they'd bring their skates in and put them in the hall for a swap, you know.
Oh.
Yeah. It was like a family more than a school.
Yeah. Any idea what the school population was? How many children there were?
79 the year I went there.
Okay.
Grades 1 through 8.
And then at some time, the middle school age, 5 through 8,
Yeah.
moved out. Do you have any idea when that was?
That was in the 60s.
Okay.
Yeah, the 60s.
And by then, the school population was large enough to fill up the school without those upper grades.
Yeah. Then the new school accommodated, how many, Sandra, was it 800 they were supposed to accommodate? But it was filled then.
Yep.
And then, now I'm fuzzy about, is that when that became the town hall? The old school, or what?
You got me as well.
I don't remember.
No, I think I can almost figure that out. I'll figure it out later.
Mhm.
I think the school moved out of the school into what's
Into the
now
new
the
school,
Stony Brook
yeah.
School. Probably about 1980.
I was going to say in the 80s it must have been,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because I was still doing town nursing at the time,
Mhm.
the DNA.
So for a while, the original Brewster Elementary School, now the town hall,
Mhm.
was not only did you fill up those extra classrooms, you had a portable classroom out there too.
Yes, the kindergarten was out there.
Yeah. Was that what it was, the kindergarten?
That's what it always was until I think
Okay.
first grade went in there when we were so overcrowded.
Right.
And the kindergarten went behind the stage in the addition to the old school. They had a classroom. in
Do
it.
you have any recollection of when the auditorium was put in?
That was in the 50s.
And how did they manage to do that? They dug out under the building?
I have no idea,
just
but I
knew
do
that-
know Mr. Burst, the principal, helped on the
He physically
the
helped.
construction. Yes. Yeah.
Was he there when you came?
Yes.
So he preceded you.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Mhm.
And he stayed for a long time.
Till the late 60s, I guess. And then he went to another school
Really?
as principal.
Oh, that's something.
And then we had a series of principals after that.
Yeah, I remember a couple of them.
Mhm.
Yeah. So when you first started in 1947,
Mhm.
how large a class would you have? You have third and fourth grades.
I had 21 students in third and fourth.
Okay.
And one interesting thing about that, you know, they were in the same room, and the third was here and the fourth was there, and there was a boy in the third grade, very aggressive, and he'd do it his way, and at that time we had a Reinhardt writing system, and he didn't like the supervisor, Mr. whatever his name, Taylor. He'd say, I won't hold my pen that way, and he was very impossible. And in the back row of the fourth grade was a very lovely girl, sweet and charming. Oh, she was so lovely. Well, they left the Brewster School and went on to Orleans High School, and the girl, by the way, the boy's mother taught first grade, Mrs. Livesey. And
John Livesey.
John Livesey's mother.
Okay.
And this is Billy I'm talking about,
Oh,
the
all
brother.
right, Billy.
So they went their separate ways to school, and then next thing you know, they got married.
Oh.
And anyway, I had always kept in touch with Kay, Mrs. Livesey. We were very close friends. And Billy and John did too, always kept in touch with me. Last summer, and I know Bill has gone up in the sports arena. Oh yeah, he's, I don't know, something with the New York. He was with the Yankees, head of scouting, staff scouting, and then he went with the Blue Jays and there's somebody else. I don't know the teams. And now and they send me a Christmas gift every year from that Howard and David, whatever, you know, the lovely
Yeah,
food.
yes, right.
And this year they came and visited. I haven't seen them since John's funeral. They were here for that. So anyway, they came and visited, and I had a friend down whose boy is all into sports, and I said, you might enjoy talking to this man. So he came, and Bill was sitting over in that chair, and to make a point, he would bang his hand down, and this ring would click. And the boy kept looking, and he said, "Mr. Livesey, is that a World Series ring?" He said, "Yes." Took it off. "You want to try it on?" Well, Billy has gone way up in that arena.
Wow.
And his mother was the first grade teacher there.
So who's the wife?
The wife is Louisa Chase. She lived on the corner of Millstone Road and 6A. There was Barbara, Kenneth, and Louisa.
Yeah, they had a chicken farm.
Right, Mr. Chase had the chicken farm. Yeah,
That's a very nice story.
yeah, it's a lovely story.
So were most of the classes about that same size
Yes,
as time went on? So you had about 21 children
21 in the two grades.
in the two grades, and it was probably differently divided every year, but about the same.
Yeah, about the same.
And at what point were there enough children to have separate classrooms for each grade?
That was when they put the addition on the old building. We needed it then.
What was the addition?
Well, what is the town hall, there's an extension where that portable building is.
Yeah.
From the back, that whole end of the building is new from the 50s.
Is that when the auditorium was
When
put
the
in?
auditorium was put in.
And did they put the building above that?
They
Is
must
that-
have, yes,
that's- So the addition is what is over the old
What we
auditorium.
had for an auditorium was one of the larger classrooms.
Right. Now, I didn't realize that
Yeah.
because that one large classroom on that end I thought had always been there, but
No,
that
no,
was
no.
part of the addition
That
in
was
the
the first
50s.
grade room when I was there,
Okay,
but that was an addition.
I see. Huh, okay. So when they went to separate grades, separate classrooms for each grade, was the size of the classroom about the same
In
still?
the 20s.
About in the
Yeah.
20s? Okay, because that seems to be the standard now, too, that you
It
have
is,
to have
yeah.
about no more
Yeah.
than 21.
Yeah.
So you've had about the same number for all that time.
Yes, true.
That's
And
interesting.
you speak of the auditorium, you must have known the Slacks,
Yes.
Chester Slack.
Yeah.
Well, their oldest daughter, Susan, played the cello, and Mr. Nasi was the music director, and he played very Wagnerian things. And we would go into that one classroom for an assembly, and Susan would be there grinding away on the cello.
When you were a teacher, did each teacher teach everything?
Yes.
Did you have specialists come in for music or art, or
Yes, we had the music was Mr. Nasi.
and he would come in
He would come
specially?
in once a week,
Okay.
and we had flutophones or whatever those awful things are that they have no connection with any other instrument in the world, but they had them. And oh, they were horrible.
I loved mine.
I remember Mr. Nasi, who was, I forget what he was, Austrian, Viennese, something, and he said, "And this is for teacher," and it was red. Oh, the kids got black. And so I took it home. I was like Peter Pan. And my poor father said, "Do you have to play that thing? You have to play that." It weird. It screeched. Terrible. So they got that instruction. The art teacher, there was an art supervisor that we shared with Dennis and Yarmouth. Jim, when we had a gym teacher, that wasn't until much later.
Mhm.
We shared with Dennis and Yarmouth.
So the music teacher, did you sing? Were there
Oh, yes.
instruments to play? Were the
The music teacher when I first went there was Miss Brown.
uh-huh.
And at that time, where the Sea Pines Inn is,
Yes,
that was the girls' school.
right.
And there was Miss Faith, Miss Gladys, and Miss Mary. They were the four teachers. And for some reason, we had her as our vocal music teacher,
Oh, okay.
not the one from Dennis and Yarmouth. And she was in our school for quite a few years, so she retired.
So she came over once a week,
once a week.
and did she get everyone together? Did she go around from classroom to classroom,
Classroom to classroom.
and they would sing?
Oh, yes.
And were there instruments? Did they, besides
Well,
the flutophone? Was there?
No, Nasi was the one.
I see.
They
Okay.
hired
So
instruments,
she was
yeah.
only singing.
She was just the vocal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Mr. Nasi would come in, and did he bring instruments? Did people?
No, they would have to hire
They would-
them from GOTS.
Oh, of course.
GOTS
Okay.
Music Store.
And you might buy one, but probably you hired one.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so was there a chorus? Did you put on a performance at the end of the year? Was
We
there an
were
orchestra? Was
the
there?
Brewster School of Performing Arts.
Oh. All right.
Mr. Burst was heavy on theater.
Really?
Oh, yeah. We did, latterly, we did Gilbert and Sullivan. I don't know which one it was. The whole school did it. And we spent weeks making bonnets out of paper plates and what have you. And Bill and Louisa had the lead. And Billy was very bright, and so was Louisa. And there was another boy whose name will not be mentioned, had a gorgeous voice, but he couldn't remember lines. So Mrs. Dunn, who was the 8th grade teacher, marvelous woman, had him do the singing, and backstage, because Billy had a voice like it was awful. Well, we did that. We used to have a Christmas
So
pageant.
you had someone standing behind the scenes singing.
Singing.
And Billy is out there.
Yeah, with Louisa. Anyway, we would have these Christmas things that were stupendous, like Radio City Music Hall, and we'd be gathering robes and what have you, for the wise men. And one funny thing, maybe you won't think it's funny, the first grade was always the manger, because they didn't have to speak. And there was a little girl, I won't mention her name, very bright little girl, but she was very awkward. And she was Mary. And every time she'd get out of the setting, she'd knock the manger over. And we were having a dress rehearsal. And didn't Susan get out, and boom, over goes the manger and the babe and everything. And Mrs. Livesey, the first grade teacher, yelled, "Mary, get out of that manger!" And then she said, oh, I said something terrible. And then one boy, and that's all I'll tell about these things, because they were the wise men. And I was stationed at the staircase to see that the wise men got down where they were supposed to be. And there was this one boy who, he was always in trouble, a good kid though. And they had to sing, "We Three Kings of Orient are," and he added, "puffing on a 5-cent cigar." Those are the things I remember.
That's what you would.
Oh,
So where did you put on these performances?
Well, those things were in the so-called new auditorium.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your Gilbert and Sullivan and all that was
Oh,
there?
I tell you, it was big competition between us and the Dennis School.
Oh.
Which one could put on the biggest production?
But you never had productions in the Old Town Hall.
Graduation was the big one, and the concerts.
Okay.
We had the vocal concert and the instrumental and the graduations. And the children in the 8th grade were given the day off of graduation, and they could go through the town and pick flowers for their decoration in the town hall. And Mr. Burst got a call from someone in Brewster, I don't know who, that his child had come in and picked up prize roses.
Oh gosh. I'm sure they were beautiful. More people got to enjoy them that way.
Oh, yes, yes.
So the children decorated
They decorated.
the auditorium at the Old Town Hall.
Yes, they did.
Did they have special clothes that they wore for graduation?
Oh, they were always dressed, not a cap and gown.
Yeah, but
they always looked spiffy.
yeah.
Shirt and tie, and the girls in dresses. They looked lovely.
So this is 8th grade graduation?
Yeah.
What about when the higher grades had moved on? Did you have a 4th grade graduation?
No. It's just the 8th.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the art teacher, when the art teacher came to the school,
Mm-hmm.
that was once a week. And
Yes.
the art teacher would go around from classroom to classroom.
And that was even the way it was at the end at the new school,
Uh-huh.
or the children would go to her.
Okay, but there was an art room.
Yes, yes, yeah.
So there was just get out your crayons and drawing paper.
Well, I did murals that they
Oh, okay.
put up on the blackboard and the paper, and they didn't have as elaborate kind of
Right.
material to work with the way they did latterly, but they did good, nice things.
Good.
Paint, watercolor, printing.
Yeah. So you saw a change from the time you had an art teacher going around once a week from class to
Mhm.
class. And then when they moved into what's now called the Stony Brook School,
Mhm.
there was an art room,
Right.
and children would go there at certain times, but
Yes.
they probably had more resources.
Oh, yes, many more. That was well equipped.
Would that have been just once a week also, or?
Yes.
Okay. Was there a school library?
No. The Brewster Ladies Library would supply us with books in a trough that they bring once every couple of weeks to each room. But we had no library.
Okay.
That was the only library that we had.
For the whole time you were there? Were there
When
not
we gave out
classroom libraries
No.
in the latter years?
Later, down in the basement, they had a library. When Christy Hay became the librarian,
Right.
she set that up.
Even in the original school
In the
building?
original school. She
And
was
then-
the one set up the library.
And then when you moved into the Stony Brook School,
She was also the librarian.
and that was a,
But until Christy came, I guess that would have been in the early 50s, she became the librarian and set that whole thing
Yeah.
up in what was the basement of the old school.
right, okay.
But up to then, they had no library.
She and Mrs. Slack actually went to library school,
Oh, really?
so they could learn to be
Uh-huh.
librarians.
She was wonderful. Both of them.
Yep. Do you have any memories of her being librarian?
Of Christy?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she was wonderful. I remember we'd go down once a week and as a class, and she'd feature one book or one something, and it happened to be Amelia Earhart this particular week, and she was telling the children about Amelia Earhart and how she knew her, that when she was younger, Amelia Earhart was a friend of her in-laws, I think it was. And she even said, and in those days, you were not accepted if you were divorced, but Amelia was divorced and she was accepted. So she and Amelia went to some place out in Coney Island where you tested to be whether you could fly or not, and she went with her, and she couldn't, she got very ill, so but she wanted to fly.
Oh.
Yeah.
So Christy was the one who really set up the library in the new school?
In the new, oh yes, yes, yes. And it was wonderful, beautiful library. And she was always available. I mean, she never was, I can't be bothered. No, she was quite a lady.
Mhm. When you moved into the new school, you had not only an art room, but you had a permanent music teacher?
Yes. Several, they changed.
Uh-huh.
You know.
And there was a permanent gym teacher,
Yes.
and that was not true earlier?
No, there was no gym teacher earlier. The 8th grade teacher, man teacher, was always a man, would go out and do their things with them, but
Yep.
we didn't have any formal kind of physical education.
So was there a recreation time during the day, or was it just this hour and a half at lunchtime?
Recess.
Recess.
Morning and afternoon, 15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And did you sometimes have to stay inside and think of recess things to do?
Oh, yeah.
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 And did you have to come up with things to do?
Yes. Sometimes you ran out of them.
Yeah? What would you do for 15 minutes when it's raining outside?
Oh, well, we'd have games or guessing games
Yeah.
or spelling bees, things like
Oh,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
Did you see a difference in the kind of material you were expected to teach? How much freedom did you have at the beginning and at the end? And did the emphasis change on subject matter or different kinds of classes, or did you?
Well, the new math was introduced in my time. I can't say that. The only thing that really made a difference was the computers. We had to, and new math, the computers, then a different technique in creative writing. We had to take classes with that to teach that. But when someone either donated or I don't know how they came into the school, but they were Apple computers, and they turned over the faculty room to a computer room, and we had to go once a week to computers with your class, and we had to take courses up at Walton High School with a computer expert, and I never caught on to it, and I didn't care one bit about it, and I knew I was going to retire, and yes, I don't care. Little did I know what was ahead.
That it was going to come at you from all directions, right?
And of course the men teachers would grab the computers first, and by the time the ladies arrived from the different schools, I had one funny experience. Mr. Bridgewood, who was then the principal, would come in once a week to observe you in this computer room, and I was petrified. So they had a system where one child was at the computer and another was a backup. So I got a hold of this little girl who was brilliant, and I said, "I'll be your backup, Meg." And she said, "Okay." So I'm from the old school. If you touch it and break it, you pay for it. Not anymore. You break it, so what? You get another one. So anyhow, I'm there, and I said, "Now wait a minute, wait, don't touch anything, don't," waiting for his arrival. And I said, "All right, go." There was a turtle or something went around in the screen, and nothing happened. And I said, "Go." And the little bright one said, "But you forgot to put the main plug in." I didn't even have them plugged in. That was my experience with computers.
I get that. I'm not a teacher. I've never been a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I get the sense now that there are many more particular things that teachers are supposed to pay attention to.
I guess so, yes.
Were you fairly free to make up your own curriculum?
Oh no, we had a curriculum.
Yeah.
That was followed through the union, the school union.
Okay.
No, we didn't just do anything we wanted to do. You had leeway. You could do what you wanted as an offshoot, but you had certain requirements.
Did things like the science instruction change over time? Or you've mentioned the new math, and I think there were different ways of teaching math, weren't there? You probably went through a few.
And then we had an affiliation with the museum, which helped in the science program a great deal, because they had someone come once or twice a month, and we would go there to the museum, so that helped. But the science at my level wasn't that difficult.
Yeah.
I don't know how it was at the upper levels.
Yeah. Do you have any sense of when that affiliation with the museum started and how long it lasted?
It would have been the 1960s.
Okay. And into the 70s and maybe 80s?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay, so it continued as long as you were there?
Oh, yes, yes.
Because it did break off at some time.
When I was there, they still did. We had an instructor coming, Mr. Case, I think his name was, Marshall Case.
Yeah.
And after him, I think Mr. Shaw.
Yeah.
And I don't remember who was.
Yeah, that might have been. Yeah, okay.
No, we had an instructor who came.
Good.
And the first one, Mr. Case, that was before the building was built.
That's right.
And they had a summer program under a tent, and they had different creatures that peculiar to the Cape on exhibition. And at the end of the summer, Mr. Case came to me and he said, "We don't know what to do with these things, would you be agreeable to having the children take care of them?" And I said, yes. I mean, there was one bullfrog and a lot of peepers and spiders and salamanders, and they were in big bell jars.
Oh.
There were 24 of them.
Oh.
And I had 24 children. So he brought them to school, and each child had one on his desk for the morning. When they'd first come in, they'd tear to get in to see their critters, their creatures. And then would come the watering, and they'd have to get water and so forth, and the custodian was wild. He said they'd slap up the floor. So anyway, there was one boy whose name will go unmentioned.
Well, you can tell it.
It was Billy Dugan.
You know, that's wonderful. I'm so pleased to know that. Okay.
It was either Billy or David.
Uh-huh.
I think it was David. And he had the bullfrog. He was bigger than the kids, and he got the first dibs on the bullfrog. So he'd look at it, and I loved to read Charlotte's Web to the children. I read it every year.
Oh, I did too.
And I'd go through all the animations, the noises, and so forth. And I forget which one I was doing, and I heard burp, burp, and I said, "That's not funny, David." "Not me, it's him." That's the first and only thing that frog ever said in that whole year. And he'd bring hamburger in for the frog and feed it.
Well, that's probably the best science lesson they could have.
Oh yeah, it was wonderful.
So did most of them, the creatures, survive the year?
Then they went back to the
Oh,
exhibition.
my.
Yeah, they did.
I think that was a
Yeah.
wonderful lesson.
Yeah.
Did you sense any difference, not in the intelligence of the children, but in the attitude of the children, or the attitude of the parents, or the esteem in which school was held? Any changes over the years you were there?
Yes.
Yeah?
But I think there are always a few people who demonstrate other
Yeah.
things but for the most part in Brewster, I found the parents very cooperative.
All the way through.
Yes, there were exceptions.
Well,
as
there
would
always
be in anything.
I'm not asking for specific
No.
examples. I'm just saying in general, because
In general.
I think sometimes you have a perception that's not necessarily correct. I would have the perception that children were more polite, better behaved in the 40s than in the 80s,
Oh,
or
yeah.
that parents were
I-
more supportive at one end than the other. But I would like you to tell me if that's right or not.
It's a difficult question.
All right?
I had found that the children's behavior changed a little. And your being the authority, they were a little bit not happy with that. And sometimes the parents would be a little difficult too. But for the most part, I think there was cooperation on
Yeah.
all sides.
Okay. The town grew greatly during
Yes,
your time there.
it
It was a
did.
very small town, and then it was a quickly growing town.
Yes, yes. It was becoming more citified, suburban,
Suburban.
really suburban. It wasn't the, the lovely little community that
Yeah.
we knew.
You lived in Brewster.
Yes, on Point of Rocks Road.
All right. Did you notice changes in, I mean, other than the fact that there were more people, did you notice changes in the town itself? If you could stand there in 1985 and look back, would you say, "Oh my, how different it is
yes,
here
it's very
or
different. Very different.
there"? Yeah,
Yeah. It's more suburban,
yeah.
very suburban.
Was there any particular class of students or any particular lesson you taught that stands out in your mind? I've had teachers tell me this was a really good group of kids, and all the way through they were smart, they were interested. Or was there one lesson that you put together you thought this one really worked?
Another teacher and I, in the new school, had a social studies course of study, Jane Ramsdell, and she was brilliant. And she compiled this whole thing. We got a new math book called, what was it? I can't remember now what it was, something about the 50s. And she called that book, or what she put together. And she did it with math, English, social studies, and science. And we had people coming in demonstrating, and she even took her class to Washington when she taught that year. So that was one teacher who really did something great for the students. And we were all fourth grade, the four of us.
4 fourth grades.
At the so-called new school.
Yeah, right.
And then, of course, we were required to take courses,
Yes.
which we did.
So did you earn a further degree?
No.
You just took
Just
courses
had the bachelor's.
to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, you must have seen a lot of teachers come and go, because I'm sure when you came, you were one of the youngest teachers there.
Yes, I was.
So you saw a lot of people retiring,
Yeah.
and then you saw a lot of young people coming in.
There was a Mrs. Dunn, who I thought was old, but she wasn't. And she was there, and of course, I was 21, the 7th and 8th grade teacher was 21, and Pauline Hooper was the 5th and 6th grade teacher with whom I became a very close friend. And so, of course, we smoked. And there was a little luncheonette across, I think it's still there, a restaurant.
The coffee shop.
Yeah.
Coffee
And
shop.
we'd go over in the afternoon and have a cup of coffee, and you'd go in, the Ellises owned it, and the counter was here and you were here, and they were right up in your face listening to everything you said. So you'd go in and they'd say, "You're going to have 2 cups of one," meaning, would you have a second cup? They made it in a drippolator. Well, one day we went in, and who's in there but Mrs. Dunn smoking a cigarette? We nearly fainted dead away. She smokes. And I guess she realized we were shocked, and she said, "I was born with one in my mouth." She was the grand dame of the Brewster School. She was, to the point, she taught English. And Billy Livesey, when he went to Maine, earned money, extra money, in the dormitory, helping kids with their thesis work, their writing, with all the grammar and everything that he had learned in Mrs. Dunn's classroom. She was marvelous.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
In elementary school.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isabel, you should tell them about your Japanese tea, without mentioning any names. Your Japanese tea with Yoko.
Oh, Yoko.
This is really lovely.
Well, I had a little girl in my class, Michelle Watkins, and obviously she was Oriental part. So one day she came up and she said, "Would you like my mother to do the tea ceremony for you?" Well, I said, "That would be lovely." So I called the mother, and she said, "Well, yes, I would be happy to do it, but, you know, it's not an entertainment. It's a serious thing, and I have to have a receiver, and I'd like you to be the receiver." And so I agreed to it. So I spent several Sundays over there with her doing the tea ceremony, and with the children in school, and then they had it down in Christie's library, and there's always one in every crowd.
So this was in the Stony Brook School?
The new school.
Okay.
And there's one in every crowd. This one boy, good kid, but if Peck's bad boy, and he'd be the type, if you gave him something, he'd say, "Ooh, gross." So I said, "Now, Mrs. Watkins will make these little fig cookies. She's going to have the ceremony with you people. And you don't say gross if you don't like it. You smile and say thank you." And I watched him. And my eyes never left him. And she handed him the cookie, and then he looked over at me, and
That was a good lesson.
yeah.
He got 2 lessons at once
Yeah.
there, the tea ceremony and
Yeah.
being polite.
Well, he helped me at the end of the year cleaning the supply room out, and the other kids were all out on the playground. He says, "I'll help you." So he did, and he even came in on a Saturday. So I said, Robert, would you like to have lunch? And he said, And there was a little Italian place near Donald Owen's store. And we went down there and we got sandwiches and we brought them back to the school. And we went in the teacher's cafeteria. He said, boy, I've never been in this place before.
Mhm.
And all the other teachers were there. And he's looking like, oh, I'm pretty special. And one other girl I have to mention, Laurel Labden. I don't know whether you know her or not,
Yep.
but she was in my 4th grade. I've had many children, but she was just everything. And her parents took her to see Annie. And she was so taken with that play. And she'd come up, she always did this, and she said, can I do it? Can we do it? And I said, oh, no, Laurel. I said, the concert is coming, the end of the year, and Mrs. Enos is busy, and, well, if we do it alone, if we don't, I said, well, I can't play all that music, but Mrs. Vaughn, who was the aide, said she would play. Well, that child got children who wouldn't speak, speaking parts. She directed it. She was the lead, of course. The father, who was a veterinarian, I think, supplied a dog. It was the most wonderful production, and I said, only your parents can come. We're not inviting the whole school because, there's a professional jealousy. Oh, who does she think she is, kind of thing. So the parents came, and just the parents. None of the school came. And I thought, I'll go the whole 100 yards, and I got a bouquet and had a kid present it to us, the director. Well, when she left my room, we both cried. We were so fond of one another. Then I read about that tragedy. You
Just for the record, tell us this story.
Well, she had the terrible automobile accident.
Right.
And I went a couple of years ago to find her studio, but it was off season, and I guess, she wasn't there. But I'd love to see her again. Terrible thing. But I understand from newspaper articles that she has this studio, and she did work out in Arizona at the university
I think
with
so.
people who were handicapped. Isn't that
And she
so?
goes around. I mean, she's been in the papers where she's been to
Yeah.
different things and everything. Yeah, and the house is all fixed for her and everything. Yeah, but she was a lovely.
Horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. She even had the children make the bedposts out of paper towel things. She made those children
She
do
was so
things
clever.
that
She really.
nobody in the world would ever. It was wonderful, among other things. And we both cried at the end of the year, and she said, I'll miss you, and I said, I'll miss you too, Laurel.
When I went over to the school, I was always impressed that teachers could keep such control over their classes. You may not have felt that way, but I certainly did
always.
watching. Did you have tricks, techniques when things were getting just too excitable?
Well, Mr. Bridgewood had a very good plan. If you did something wrong, you didn't chastise at that point. You said, you did this, it's wrong, go get the green book.
That's right.
The child had to go to his office, get the green book, bring it back to the teacher. The teacher would write the offense in. Then the child would take the book back, and then he'd arrange a meeting with you at the child at some later date. And his philosophy was it gives the teacher a chance to cool off, the child to no exchange of words or anything. And it worked like a charm, to the point that who did something wrong? His little girl, who was in my class, and the apple of his eye. And I told the children not to go on the rocks out there. The hornets were terrible. Who goes on the rock? Allison. So I said, Allison, go to Mr. Bridgewood and get the green book. I'll never do it again. No, I'll never do it again. No. I said, no, get them. I was shaking too, because I thought, he'll say this old crab here and my little darling daughter. Well, she went 2 steps backwards and 1 step forward. And she got the green book, and oh, she was very tearful and brought it back to him. And then I chewed my nails waiting for the big meeting. And he called me down on the telephone, and Allison, and we went down, and I don't know who was more afraid, Allison or me. And he was wonderful. He really was. And he, he said, well, you were at fault. And so at the end of the year, what he would do, we'd have a general assembly, and he'd take the green book and the blue book. The blue book was when you did something special. And he'd take the green book and he would tear the pages, and he said, that's last year. We start now, this year. But the blue book stays when you do good things. He was a good principal. Very good principal.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
He participated in things too.
Oh, yes. We had a Chinese, Donna Knight, the art teacher, had a whole week of Chinese art and what have you. And she had him riding a rickshaw in every morning. And we all wore Japanese. We searched for Japanese things to wear. And we did Tai Chi every morning for a month, I think it was. She was very innovative teacher.
So he rode in on a rickshaw.
Yep.
Right, rode where?
In the gym.
Oh, into the gym.
To the gym.
So was the whole school assembled?
The
Was he-
whole school was
Oh, it
assembled.
was wonderful.
Yeah.
Was it just for a week, or?
Longer than a week,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
And was
Might
he
have
There was
dressed
a lot
up
of
too?
preparation before.
Oh yes, everybody was dressed. We begged, borrowed, and stole Oriental clothing from people. But we did. We really did. And then one other thing, and then me, but I never cared for Christmas parties that got wild and throwing candy and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So I said, I'm going to do what I think is right. So I guess it was the Friday before we went on vacation, and I got my Westminster Boys Choir records, brought them to school, and I brought a tablecloth. I brought a punch bowl with the punch glasses, candles, which I shouldn't have lit, but I did, and I set it all up for that last day, and the kids came in looking, oh, what is this? And looked at me, and I had the music playing, and I said, now this is going to be our Christmas party. And you could hear, oh. So, do you know Janet Shaw?
I do.
All right. Well, Janet was another fourth grade teacher.
Yeah.
And she came to the door, my door, when the kids loved it. They said they did. They wouldn't say otherwise. But anyway, she came to the door, and I opened it, and she looked, and she saw the candles and this music playing. And I said, are you a relative or friend of the bereaved? And she looked at me. She wanted to ask me something, and she said, oh, this looks like fun.
So that was a very nice special thing, one that the school did, and the one that
Well,
you did.
not to throw bouquets, but some of the children who would come the next year say, you going to do that thing like you did with my brother or sister?
Yeah.
They liked it.
They like special things.
Yes, yes.
Did you do other special things? I'm sure you
Took
did.
me
but-
all year to do that.
Yeah.
You did a lot
No.
of quiet things with the kids too.
What?
You did a lot of quiet things,
Yeah.
letting them read
Yeah.
about different things and stuff. Yeah.
They liked me to read to them.
Yeah.
Sure.
And they'd come up from lunch and they'd sit on the floor right away. Didn't even ask, are you going to read? They liked me to read to them.
Some teachers, if you finished their work early or you were just being good, there would be some kind of special treat. I know Gary Robbins at one time had
Oh,
a
he
chair
was
in the
something.
back of the room.
Yeah.
If you finished everything, you could go sit in the easy chair and read a
that's
book.
Nice. Yeah.
Did you?
I didn't do anything like that.
Yeah.
No. Speaking of Gary, they'd come to me from third grade, and everything was Mr. Robbins did it this way, Mr. Robbins did it that way, and who cares? Well, Mr. Robbins did it. I'm doing it that way. Matter of fact, I had one of the teachers visiting the other day, Charlie McKendry.
And he's sort of had a specialty in science himself.
Oh,
didn't he?
very
Yeah.
much so.
Oh.
Yeah.
He's still there, part-time with Patsy Martin.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good.
No, he really did.
Not full-time.
But he came
but
over
part-time.
last week to see me.
What were some of the things he did with his science interest?
I don't know, because
Okay.
he was third grade,
Uh-huh.
and we were at the other end of the building.
Okay.
One funny thing about him, though, we had that big bulletin board in the hall where the third was and the fourth, and we had to do it every month. And we were running out of ideas and holidays, and we said, what the devil are we going to do? So the teachers had to do it. So Jane Ramsdell came up with the idea, why don't we put baby pictures of ourselves up and
That was
young,
fun. That was good.
and let the children guess who they are. So we did, and they guessed most of them, but there was one that they could not, and we couldn't figure out who it was. Very kind of beetly haircut, long hair. We kept saying, who the devil is that? Charlie McHenry. And we said, you, Charlie? Mr. Crewcut? He said, oh, I had my other side too.
That's very nice. That's very nice.
And what about the snake that got out that Gary had? Remember the snake that got lost in the library?
Yes.
And we were all doing exercises down there. It was after school, and all the teachers were down there. We're laying on the rug, and all of a sudden, there comes
Did you hear that?
funny thing.
Did you hear that?
Oh,
Well, then Ann Keefe had a saltwater aquarium. She was the third grade teacher, lived near me, and we'd travel together. And she was never on time. She was always a little bit late for everything. And I'd be peppering when it was her turn to drive, and we'd have to stop up here at the water, get the salt water for the aquarium, and she's out there with the hair blowing. And but the kids loved it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked a lot about the school and the children and your teaching, but I have the sense that the Brewster teachers were really good friends, that you did things outside of
Oh, yeah.
school together, a
Yeah.
lot of you.
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Quite a bit. Yeah, we did.
Well, share some story with us. Or,
Oh, golly.
you mentioned going across the street to the coffee shop,
Yes, we did that. And
but I think sometimes Fridays you'd go out at the end of the week. and-
some of them did. And then when there was a bride going to be a wedding, we'd have a shower. Or when somebody left, we'd go out to dinner.
Mhm.
There was one time, I don't know as your children would have known, Mrs. Callahan.
Mhm.
Well, her first year there, we had a dinner, Christmas dinner for the teachers at the, what's that house in Orleans? Some house.
Linnell?
Linnell.
Captain Linnell?
And I was in charge of taking down who was eating what. And Alice was there. I knew her very briefly. She'd come in September. This was end of November. And she had this young man with her. And she introduced him to me. And I was going around taking you roast beef or chicken or whatever. And he said, roast beef to me. And then he said, oh, by the way, would you empty this ashtray, please? He thought I was the hostess or the waitress. Alice nearly died. That's the teacher. Oh, he said, I'm so sorry. Well, we became very friendly, Alice and the husband and my husband and myself. And when we moved over here to this house, Alice and Richard came over to visit, and he says, I have a little housewarming gift for you. And I said, what? It was an ashtray with a stub of a cigarette in it.
He was something.
But we did have social gatherings together.
You know what, I should have asked you early because you were married while you were
Yes.
there. And I suspect some of the people we've talked to knew you by your maiden name.
LaPorte, yes.
So tell me all your names so I'll know who
Okay.
you are.
I was born Stone.
Okay. So
And I
somebody
married-
knew you as Miss Stone.
Yes,
Okay.
the first year. Then I became Mrs. LaPorte
Okay.
in the 50s.
Uh-huh.
Then in the 60s, they wouldn't have known me as Mrs. Lamberg because I never publicized
Oh,
the fact
all
that I'd
right.
be married.
Right.
I was leaving and I thought, well,
Yeah.
they'll have a shower and I'm too old for that kind of stuff. Why bother?
Okay. Well, so what do you go by now?
Anything they want to call me.
Yeah. We've got Isabel anyway, right?
That's right. That's enough. No, this woman over here in that house, they only come in the summer, and one day she's kind of a nosy Nellie, and she came up and well, out front I have a nameplate Stone, which was the family name, and then I'm LaPorte, and Ingoff was Lamberg, and she said, "Well, just who are you?"
Well, I guess I was kind of getting there, wasn't I?
Keeps them guessing. I do have a very well-known author lives across the street.
Oh, yes?
He writes children's books and illustrates them. Bob Straake. He does the New York. He's on the staff of the New Yorker magazine.
Oh.
Does many of the covers.
Did a book up. Isabel's in one of his books.
Yeah,
Are
he
you?
Yeah.
made me a character in one of the books. But I met him. They moved here about, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. One day there was a knock at the door, and this fellow was standing there, big man. He said, "Hello, I'm your new neighbor." Well, I said, "How do you do? I'm Bob Straake." And so he came in, and he said, "My family will be coming from St. Louis in another couple of weeks," and so on and so forth. And he stayed briefly, and then when he went out, he said, "Do you like muffins?" I said, "Yes, I do." Next morning he was here at 8 o'clock. He likes to cook. So he had muffins for me. Well, over the years, we're not buddy friends, but they're there, I'm here,
Yep.
and if one needs the other, we visit once in a while. Well, anyway, last last June, he came up and he said, "I have a proposition for you. Would you be agreeable to it? Let me tell you first, there's money in it for you." He was doing a commercial on TV, and this company was coming from, the commercial was out of San Francisco, and the company I think was coming up from New York, but the parking here is so difficult. He said, could they put their trucks, their camera equipment out in the yard? I said, of course. And he said, now you don't come cheap. You go 100 above what they offer you. So anyway, a very nice young man who was in charge of everything came up several times, and they'd come at 6 in the morning, you wouldn't even hear them. They'd leave and they'd go to the library for filming, and down to a wharf in Hyannis where the book was pictured, and over in his studio, which is right on the road across the street here.
Oh.
It's right on the edge of the road. So it was very interesting. It was about a week, and then at the end of the week, the young man who was the clerk of the works came up and he said, well, you know, we were thinking of 200, but would you take 300? I said, oh yes, I would take it any day. So that's what I got for letting them park there.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you and some of the other teachers actually went on trips together. You had vacations together.
I didn't.
Not so much.
I think Jane and
Oh, right.
Sandra
Yeah.
and Janet did,
Okay.
but I didn't.
All right. We've covered an awful lot. Is there anything you think you'd just like to tell us about the school or the Brewster you remember, or anything that you think
Well,
future generations would like
I'll
to
tell
know?
you, those years at the Brewster School from beginning to end were the happiest. I always wanted to be a teacher. I came from teachers, and I tell them what was going on in my life at school, and my aunts would say, we didn't have, they taught in the public school system in New York, we didn't have
Hello?
anything like that. That was my life,
Yeah.
Pardon?
and I
Hold on just a minute. Oh, excuse me, I didn't mean to go.
delighted that I've
Hello?
been privileged to live here
Yeah.
Yeah.
and be associated with all the children I knew. And it's very gratifying when you have children of
Gee, okay, I'll tell her.
how many
Okay.
years ago
Okay.
they remember you.
Yeah. You know what I didn't say? You must have taught children of your children.
Oh, absolutely.
And maybe grandchildren of your children.
If I'd been there now.
Yeah.
I don't think there were any grandchildren.
Didn't quite get there.
Maybe the Williams boy, but I'm not
Oh.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. Very wonderful part of my life. Oh, and I was a librarian at the Brewster Library once. Children's librarian one summer.
Were you?
There was a was it a centennial celebration?
In the 50s.
Yeah, and evidently was founded at the time of the War of 1812. And my Aunt Catherine, who was an art teacher in New York and had taken many courses with Tony Sogg, the puppeteer, marionette man, and she made a girl and a sailor of that era, and I used to do that in the children's room.
Oh, what fun.
And I worked there that whole summer. Mrs. Ellis was the librarian. Mrs. Breyer was the assistant.
Yes,
Evelyn
okay.
Breyer.
Yeah,
And that was a nice thing. I did it as a summer job.
yeah. Did you have summer jobs other times?
Oh, I waitressed.
Did you?
Oh, yes.
Teachers didn't, oh, you know what I wanted to ask? Teachers didn't get paid sumptuously.
No.
I think even beginning teachers probably proportionately get paid a little better than you did.
My first yearly salary was $1,000.
Yeah.
$67 every 2 weeks.
And was that
1947.
was that enough to live on?
Oh, it was
You were
living
living
my
with your
family,
parents.
Yeah.
It would have been hard to live on your own on that?
Well, they could board. Probably the board would be $15 a week.
Yeah.
But most of them lived in the area, or there was only one woman, Mrs. Morse, who boarded teachers.
Okay. And were there other requirements for teachers? I mean, were you, other than being a good teacher, were there sort of outside requirements for you at all?
You mean activities or?
Well, yes. How about that?
Engaging in other-
Yeah, were you
No.
expected to do other things for the school? Did
No,
you?
no.
Okay.
No.
But they didn't have restrictions on your life outside the school.
Oh yes, Mr. Burse said at the first meeting, he was our principal, there was up in Orleans where there's a bank now next to the True Value. Well, there was a beautiful inn there, the Southwood Inn.
Yeah.
Lovely, lovely inn. But they also had a bar called the Barn. And Mr. Burse said, there are two places you are never seen. Lee's Four Aces, which was, what is it now?
Lorinos?
Or
Yeah.
the Barn at the
That was
Southwood
another
Inn.
place.
You will never be
During the
seen
war.
there. And you do not smoke.
Oh,
So Polly and I would go up to Orleans for coffee in the afternoon, and when we got over the railroad tracks, we'd light the cigarettes.
so it's okay as long as you weren't in Brewster.
Yeah. He smoked like a chimney.
What about sick time or personal time or?
Well, I think we got 3 weeks a year. I remember I got the mumps
Oh dear.
teaching. The whole school had it. It was terrible. But I think we got 3 weeks for sickness in that time. I don't remember.
Okay. And then they would hire a substitute for
Yeah.
you.
I think Kay Hart was the sub. You weren't sick very often.
Yeah,
You went.
right. But now they even have personal days. And,
Oh yes, they did toward the end when I was there.
okay, so that was
you had
coming
three
in.
a year,
Okay.
and sick leave. I don't know how much
Yeah.
you accumulated it because
Oh,
I know I
okay,
had
good.
a great deal of sick time. That I happened to become ill just before I retired, so I took that time then.
Yeah, 'cause you
I was
had it,
very
good.
fortunate to have it.
This has been such fun.
I've enjoyed it. I love talking about the good old days.
Well, it sounds like you made them good too.
Well, I hope I did.
We have not done a great many interviews, but we have talked to several people who have remembered you as a teacher.
Really?
Mm.
I hope they remember
The
me
other
fondly.
teacher, the other people they talk about are Ozzie Burse
Mr. Burris, yes.
and Dot Daly.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
She was a peach. I had the boy, had all of them for that matter. That day was a horrible day. It was a cold February day, and her room was next to mine, and Mr. Ferrero was the principal then, and he came in to me and he said, "Will you cover Dot's room? I wanted to see her." And I'd seen the Army staff car coming up the driveway, and so I said to him, "Is it Skip?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Wounded? Dead?" Well, he went in the room and, "Come on, Mrs. Daly, I want to talk to you, I want to talk to you." So she left, and you know how small that school was, and I heard a scream, my baby, what have they done to my baby?" And Skip was the kind of a boy that he did everything that you should do, you know. He wasn't a milquetoast, but he did everything. He was a good boy. He was going to be a teacher, became an officer in the Army, and then the boy with him, Ellis boy, Gilbert Ellis. They were very close friends, and Gilbert was a medic in the unit that he was in and had to identify him. And then they, of course, had the big funeral here in Brewster on television even. He wasn't buried at Arlington. She wanted him buried here.
What year would that have been?
It was in the 70s.
Oh, it was Vietnam.
And the memorial was at the town hall.
Yeah, I think it was...
Well, the school.
Yeah, it was the late 60s. The late 60s.
But it was Vietnam.
Yeah. And he was supposed, when he was assigned, he knew he was going to Vietnam, and he was given a 30-day leave, and he was going to leave from Fort Ord, California. And he thought, well, will I go home? Or what'll I do? No, I'll be getting R&R when I get over there. I'll come back. No. So he entered into the golf classic, Bob Hope golf classic. He was quite an athlete and a good golfer. And he entered, and he won one of the low prizes. I think it was $2,000. By cracky, he died that year. And didn't the Dalys get a bill from the state of California, state income tax, on the money he had won in that tournament? I don't know whether they had to pay it or not, but I thought it was pretty cruel.
Yeah. I don't want to end there.
No.
Tell me a good story.
Oh, dear. I have to think about that one.
Okay.
There were many at school.
Yeah.
Many at school.
Well, I feel I've learned so much. This has been...
I hope so.
It's
It's been a
so
pleasure having you
interesting.
Wealth
here.
of information.
Yep.
Very, very nice afternoon. Lovely.
If you think of something just important that we should know, give me a call. We'll make an addendum.
That would be
I
nice.
do have one.